Oscar and the Bots, the battle for the Atlantic. Once upon a wave in the vast sparkling waters of the Atlantic Ocean lived the most unusual creature named Oscar the Ostrich. Now, you might be wondering how an ostrich, a bird that doesn't even fly, end up living in the middle of the ocean. Well, Oscar wasn't just any ordinary ostrich. He was an ostrich of grand dreams and even grander adventures, a bird who believed that just because you were built for the land didn't mean you couldn't conquer the seas. Oscar lived on a tiny island in the Atlantic, where he spent his days exploring, daydreaming, and hanging out with his best friends, an odd group of bots named Buzz, Whirl, and Zing. These bots were no ordinary bots. They were inventors, explorers, and pranksters who loved nothing more than creating the wildest gadgets imaginable. They zipped around the island on wheels, bouncing through the waves on their floatable treads, always up to something new and exciting. And of course, there was Dr. Danny Daydreamer, a scientist known for getting lost in his own thoughts. Danny lived in a tall, crooked lighthouse on the island, where he spent his days concocting wild inventions that often worked more in his head than in real life. Still, he was a genius in his own way, full of endless ideas and daydreams that somehow always seemed to help save the day. One bright and breezy morning, Oscar and the bots were busy constructing a rocket surfboard, because regular surfboards were far too boring, when an enormous shadow darkened the sun, stretching across the shore. Oscar's beak dropped open. Hovering above the island was a giant football-shaped submarine. At the front, glaring down with a sneer on his face, was the infamous Flint Ironfoot, the biggest, brawniest football player in the world. Flint was known across the oceans for his incredible strength and even more incredible ego.
Prepare to lose your island!
Flint bellowed through a megaphone. His voice echoed over the waves.
I, Flint Ironfoot, will take this land, and there's nothing you or your tiny bots can do about it.
The bots whizzed to Oscar's side, looking nervous. Flint Ironfoot had never lost a game, never lost a competition, and never lost a battle. He had powerful arms and legs like tree trunks, and a determination as unyielding as a hurricane. Flint had decided this island was perfect for building his new football training camp, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. Oscar gulped. How could he, a gangly, flightless bird, stand up to Flint Ironfoot? Before anyone could speak, a loud voice interrupted.
Aha! I know exactly what to do.
It was Dr. Danny Daydreamer, who had wandered down from his lighthouse. His eyes glazed over as if lost in some distant thought.
We'll challenge Flint to a game, but not just any game. A game of mind and muscle.
Oscar blinked. What do you mean, Dr. Danny?
Well,
Danny said, twirling his wild hair.
Flint thinks he can win with brute strength, but we'll use imagination and ingenuity. Just let me daydream a while. I'll come up with something.
Oscar, still unsure, puffed up his feathers and stood tall. We can't give up. He may be strong, but we have something he doesn't. Teamwork. And with Dr. Danny's ideas, we'll surprise him. With Danny's strange but creative input, the bots sprang into action. They needed a plan. Something clever, something unexpected, something Flint Ironfoot wouldn't see coming. Flint and his crew had already begun marching off their submarine, preparing to set up goalposts on the shore. Time was running out. Dr. Danny Daydreamer suddenly snapped out of his trance, eyes wide with excitement.
I've got it! We'll turn this island into a football field, but one that bends the rules of reality. I see it in my head. Moving goalposts, floating obstacles, and yes, the football will have wings!
The bots quickly got to work on Danny's wild idea. Buzz created electric-powered goalposts that could float in the air and move on their own. Whirl built a maze of twisting, spinning obstacles that hovered above the sand. And Zing developed a rocket-powered football that sprouted little wings, just as Danny had imagined. When Flint saw the strange football field, he burst out laughing.
This is your defense? I could win this game blindfolded!
Then let's see you try, said Oscar, his feathers ruffled with determination. The match began. Flint and his team of burly players started strong, charging down the field with all the power of a crashing wave. But as soon as they reached the middle of the island, they ran into Whirl's floating maze. Flint was too big and bulky to navigate the twisting passages, and his teammates fumbled as they tried to catch the rocket football that darted and dived through the air. Oscar, meanwhile, dashed across the field with surprising speed. His long legs carried him over obstacles, and he kicked the winged football with surprising precision, sending it soaring through the air. The bots zoomed around, distracting Flint's team with gadgets and using the floating goalposts to keep him guessing. Flint roared in frustration as his players struggled.
Oh, this is not how football is supposed to be played!
He shouted. Oscar grinned. Maybe it's not about playing the game your way, but finding a way that works for everyone. The match went on, with Flint's team becoming more and more frustrated by the clever tricks and teamwork of Oscar, the bots, and Dr. Danny Daydreamer's inventions. By the final whistle, Flint had barely managed to score any points, while Oscar and his bot team had racked up an impressive number of goals. Flint Ironfoot, for the first time ever, had lost. Breathing heavily, Flint slumped down onto the sand.
How did you beat me? I'm bigger, stronger, and faster!
Oscar waddled over, offering Flint a wing to shake. You might be all of those things, but you underestimated us. Just because we're small doesn't mean we're not smart. And when you've got good friends working together, you can do anything. Dr. Danny Daydreamer, still lost in his thoughts, murmured,
Ah yes, the power of dreams and teamwork, the most unstoppable combination.
Flint stared for a moment, then cracked a grin and shook Oscar's wing.
You've got guts, Ostrich. Maybe I'll join your team next time.
And so, Flint Ironfoot left the island with newfound respect for Oscar, the bots, and Dr. Danny Daydreamer. The island was safe, and Oscar had learned something valuable that day. That being underestimated wasn't a weakness, but a strength. With clever thinking, wild daydreams, and teamwork, even the smallest, quirkiest group could overcome the biggest challenges.